In this lecture, I want to talk about the extrude, as well as several various options with the selection intent. So I'm going to click on the extrude. Now, once again, when you go into a function, you're going to have your selection intent morph the toolbar. So you have to go and make sure that you're picking the correct thing. So if I come over here, just leave everything at feature curves. You'll notice I have one sketch. If I pick the sketch, it's going to pick all of the curves of the sketch. And you may end up with some peculiar behavior. I'm just going to simply select OK and see what I ended up with. I have one extrude. Now you'll note I'm just going to hide this main body. So I'll take you and hide everything except for that little surface. Now that little surface is the result from that sketch. Why? Let me show that sketch. You'll notice that I have a curve that's kind of floating out in the middle of that sketch. When I extruded the entire feature, well, it's part of the feature. It has to extrude that, so it just made a surface, a sheet body. All right, how do I not get that? So I'm going to undo, go back to this point. When I do my extrude, instead of feature curves, I can use what's called connected curves. So when I come in here, if I pick this, you'll notice it just picks the connected curves. It ignores that hole in the middle. It ignores that fillet. So in this case, I'll just end up with the final solid volume. All right, I'm just going to cancel, restart the menu. I'm going to go back into extrude. This time, I'm going to go into connected curves, and I'm going to use what's called follow fillet. And there's another tool here called stop at intersection. I want to turn these two on. And the reason why I want to do that is when I pick my sketch now, you'll notice I get a different behavior. The stop at intersection is telling it to stop where the two lines come together. That's technically an intersection point. And the follow fillet is saying, hey, if it's tangent, continue along that tangency. So now I can basically pick one curve that tells the extrusion. Again, remember, these selection intents are built into the feature to follow that fillet, stop at that intersection, follow that fillet, and work its way around. If I pick another curve like this circle in the center, you'll notice that there's no intersections, there's no nothing. It just goes ahead and does what it's supposed to do. I'm going to select OK and create that extrusion. Now I'm going to go back in and make a modification to that sketch. I'm going to move this out to here. I'm going to finish, and I end up with something completely different. Now you'll notice I have two bodies. Those two bodies are because I have basically two different profiles now. All right. When I picked this, I picked two different profiles. I had the outer and the inner. Well, when that sketch was wholly inside, that circle was wholly inside the initial outer profile, it recognized it as a whole. Now that it's outside of that profile, it doesn't recognize it as a whole any longer. It recognizes it as a separate profile to make an extrusion out of. So this is what I mean by selection intent. You want to make sure that you build that intelligence into your feature correctly. Just be cautious when you're sketching and when you're extruding, revolving, anything that has heavily to do with the selection intent, to make sure that you use the correct intent for your selection, because you can end up with different results like this. I'm just going to undo that. Now here, I'm just going to go back into extrude. I want to use, again, connected curves. I'm going to use the follow fillet along with my stop at intersection. I'm going to pick that curve. I get exactly what I want. Once again, I can adjust the height, positive and negative directions. You'll notice if I go in the opposite direction, it's a negative value. If I go in the same direction, it's a positive value. I also have the ability to use a symmetric value. So if one side grows, the other side grows as well, symmetrically across the plane. You have different options that you can select surfaces or other faces to trim up to as well. We'll come down. Booleans, once again, this is what can potentially happen to solids that share a similar space. We'll be talking about this. Come down. Below that, you also have the ability to apply a draft. So if I click on draft, I can say from, in this case, start section. So the section curve is driving the draft. You'll see I have now angled walls on that. And I can go ahead and change this any way that I need. You have other options in here from start limit. In this case, the start limit is this top up here, or I apologize, for this bottom down here. This is starting here and it's drafting in from there. So if I increase this, it maintains the start limit. It's no longer looking at the section as the start for the draft. You have asymmetric angles as well, so you may be able to draft top and bottom differently, castings, forgings, that type of thing. Switch that back to none. You also have the ability to do offsets, single-sided, two-sided, symmetric. So if you're building a wall, like in this case, I'm just going to do a symmetric. It's just going to measure off of that initial sketch as its neutral element. So it's coming off the center point. And I can again do asymmetric by doing a single-sided or two-sided, whatever it is I need. And just change this back to none, come back down to the settings at the very bottom. And once again, if I need a sheet, I can switch that to sheet to get a surface. Select OK, and there's my solid body. So once again, whenever you're doing an extrude, any of these features that require you to pick a section, you want to make sure you have your selection intent set correctly. And from that, once you have that set correctly, then worry about what's going on inside the menu, because what you pick will definitely affect everything downstream. How you pick it, what features you have set for selection intent as well.